So I'm on my way to work, where I work as a full-time art director and I've done that for about 8 years. I've been a professional artist for about 20, and doing graphic design and illustration. And when I'm not doing those things, I'm working on things like my books, Jacob's Apartment, a coming-of-age story that deals with the kinds of questions that can shake even the strongest of faith. That's a slice of life, doomed romance graphic novel that I believe you guys will enjoy. You can order that through Graphic Mundi, or if you want to really support it, go to your local bookstore or comic book store and ask that they carry it. That actually goes a really long way. I'm just tilting this so it gets a better view. And hopefully this thing doesn't fall off of the window, because that's happened before. So, what else? I have a book called Two Stories. That's an autobiographical story about my journey dealing with depression. It's hand-lettered, hand-inked, and handwritten, and hand-drawn, and then handed to you on Amazon. So that one you can order on Amazon. That's probably your best bet for price. Or you can go to your local indie store and ask that they carry that book as well. Although the likelihood of them carrying that is much slimmer, because that one's distroed through Ingram, whereas the book Jacob's Apartment is distributed through Diamond, and Diamond has like a much broader ordering field. So anyhow, those are both good books that I'm really proud of. They're graphic novels that, if you combine them together, represent about a decade of work on my part. And currently, I'm also working on a book called Not Death But Love: The Strange Supernatural Story of Elizabeth Barrett Browning, which is a historical fiction graphic novel that talks about Elizabeth Barrett Browning and her kind of strange delving into the supernatural. It's an interesting historical fiction book that is based heavily off of the actual historical record of Elizabeth Barrett Browning, with figures and characters that are pulled straight out of the history books. And it's a story that's been untold so far, and that's pretty exciting to like be a part of, telling a story about like a very iconic writer in history that nobody's delved into. And so I'm really excited about that. So where we're at on this book so far is we have about 26 finished pages, and then I have just recently, 25 finished pages, and I have just recently roughed out pages 26 through 31. 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31. Yep, 31. So tonight my goal is, so I finished my last thumbnail. Most of these I've done on live streams, which, by the way, if you guys aren't watching my live streams, I feel like you're missing out on a huge part of this YouTube channel. You can just hit subscribe and hit the bell and get notifications when we're about to go live. It's a lot of fun. It's like an art hangout where we all kind of work on art, and chat, and talk and hang out, and it's pretty exciting. But that being said, hold on a second, let me have some coffee too. I didn't end up doing the last thumbnail and rough on air, doing a live stream, because I was watching other people's live streams last night while I was working. It was a lot of fun. I did do 2 yesterday though, so there's 2 live streams where you can kind of watch me working on these things. So tonight my goal is to probably try to do the lettering and panel borders, like finalize those based on the roughs, and hopefully like maybe take photo references. We'll see if I'm able to get everybody together that's been helping with the photo references, but I think that'll be possible. So yeah, that's basically my plans for the day, and I am heading to work. And I've just been thinking about, with all the crazy things, like, I don't know, anybody who's lived in the world in the last, like, 2 years has been dealing with just like a massive amount of upheaval and change and kind of interesting global events that are kind of touching and impacting every single person's life. I mean, we've just been through a pandemic where pretty much everybody was shut down in their homes. There are wars going on all across the world. There are, outbreaks of other diseases that are in the news. And there's a lot of things out there that can cause anxiety or stress or interfere with like our ability to do a workflow and our ability to kind of like, as artists, like focus on on basically making new art. There's definitely times where I think artists actually question, and sometimes validly, like, what is the purpose of art in a world where things are chaotic? Like, what good does art do? Does telling a story or writing a book really have much of an impact on that? On the globe, on individuals? Like how exactly do we kind of navigate the act of art creation in such uncertain times? There are a few answers I have to this, and this isn't a solid worked out thing. This is kind of me riffing on an idea. I don't tend to pre-plan my vlogs. I don't tend to like map out exactly my position on things. Quite often these vlogs function, and as well as the live streams, they just function as like a sounding board for me to kind of work out ideas and hopefully communicate to you guys and get your take on things too. For me, I think that art has inherent value because it's an expression of humanity, and I think that humans have value, and that ties into my belief, my religious belief, that I think that all people are made in the image of God. So when I think of those people then making images and making stories, I think that the act of creation is a reflection of the Creator that made all of us, right? Now, you don't have to agree with that or even philosophically be on board with that, but my point is there's like a philosophical underpinning behind why I create, and I can forget sometimes that philosophical underpinning and the importance of it and why it is so important until we hit on certain times, and then I can fall back on that solid idea when things get kind of crazy. I'm not saying that art is going to save the world. I'm just saying that art, I believe, has inherent value outside of this system of exchange of commerce that we're all stuck in, like where, most of our value in at least the modern Western world is very much based on, a capital market where everything is assigned value based on whether people will pay for it. And that can be a good system. Like, it can be a good system when it comes to competitive innovation. Like, obviously, if you and I are both selling the same product and we're in a market that is a capitalistic market, we have to compete. And in our competition, the innovation will win out. Like, if we're innovative and it works and it becomes and it brings costs down, and the consumer likes it more, then basically that can drive like kind of innovation. It can drive productivity, and it can drive down costs, right? Because like obviously if I can offer something for cheaper, that's of equal quality, right? People are going to go for that with me. But there are things where that like market system, where it's like a competitive market, kind of collapse. Some of this is in areas of like identity and expression and humanity and art. I think that to boil down human beings as like a monetary number, basically assigning value only by what they can bring to the table on like when it comes to like money, is not necessarily the most healthy approach to like human beings and human relationships. It kind of boils down human relationships into like a transactional kind of thing, where it's like the only people who have value are people who can offer value. And that kind of leaves a good chunk of people out in the cold. Like, what if you're somebody who has like severe mental disabilities? And I'm not talking about just like the kind of mental health that I've written publicly about, which I think there's a little bit more control over. But I'm talking about, you know, like people with severe disorders, you know, where like they're literally like going home and hearing people talk to them, or they're like, you know, their mental faculties are kind of delayed from what everyone else in society's, you know, the common expectation of like your mental abilities are. You know, it's like, what if you're a human being? Like, I guess what I'm getting at is like the idea of everything breaking down to like what people can offer society as what assigns them value collapses if you believe that there is inherent value in human beings regardless of what they can offer, or there's inherent value in friendships regardless of what those friendships can offer. It's just something I think about a little bit. And again, like I'm not even sure where this is going to kind of wind up. But my point is, I think art kind of falls into this area where art can be something in a capitalist environment where it's about like how much money can the art make, how much profit can it generate, and how competitive can it be? Like, can it be done quicker? Can it be done more efficiently? Can it be done in an innovative way that kind of changes up the game? And I think in that kind of context, if you're looking at things just by value that they bring in a capitalistic market, then you would probably want art that is just very light, very easy to digest, and kind of almost just provides people with like a slight alleviation, you know, dealing with working in a capitalistic society where, you know, we're basically productivity machines. And so then art becomes about productivity machines, and people get dehumanized in the process. And then the art, I think, in turn, can kind of become like dehumanized. Like the art can start having less of a human story, and it starts looking more and more kind of corporate and more feeding a system exactly what it wants. And this is just like a random idea. You guys have to tell me in the comments if this makes any sense. But if you're like me and you believe that there is something more to art that's harder to pin down, like it's less black and white, where it's like I can't necessarily say that the value of art is just simply a dollar value. I think we've all had moments where you like experience beauty, and this is where it gets kind of weird, where it's not necessarily something you can commodify, and it like the experience of beauty, which I believe in. I know that's like in postmodern times, like people like to just kind of disregard the idea of beauty, or say that beauty is like a social thing, like it's a societal construct that is just having to do with like the trends and the fashions and stuff like that of the current society. But I mean, I also think that if people are honest with themselves, they've had moments in their lives where like there's just these strange moments of beauty that you'll experience. Some of it could be just like, you know, if you have a kid, like having a moment where there's love, like you're you know, a bond between a parent and a child, and a beautiful moment within that bond where, you know, it's not possible to kind of put it on a like in a store and put a price tag on it and make it part of the commercial system. There are things beyond. That may not have been the best example either, but there are things beyond, I believe, beyond just dollar amounts. I would say the value of human life is just should be an unquestioned thing. But in a free market kind of scenario, human life is just boiled down to what people can offer society, and that leaves a whole chunk of people who, outside of their own choice, are unable to contribute to society, kind of out in the cold. And I know that there are some people who might believe that that's the case. I know there's a lot of people who get all into like the Ayn Randian idea of like, great, then those people are worthless, which I think that leads down a very dangerous path, starting to assign certain people as worthless. But that's I guess for each person to decide when they're comparing it to their own kind of epistemic idea of what is valuable, right? What is true, what is beautiful. These are things that I guess I'm just bringing up these ideas because when we're dealing with the tumultuous nature of life and we're artists, we should have a rough idea of what our epistemic bearing is for creation. Like, why are we making art? And if why we're making art is for commercial gain, then great, make commercial art and call it a day. But if you think there's something more to it, that's actually a very sustainable, like having a very, I shouldn't say it is, having like a sustainable, strong foundation for why make, why exist, like these kind of things. These are deep questions, but they're important questions for the artist and the writer and the storyteller to be able to answer, because inevitably when you're in the process of doing this kind of stuff, you're in my scenario or many of my friends' scenarios where you're making stories, you're making books, inevitably you're going to get hit with that question of like, what good am I providing? What net positive am I providing society with what I do? And I do think that, like, hopefully, ideally, there will be a net good or a net positive of what you're doing. But I think personally, I'm finding that in my life, I'm thinking there's more to it than that. I think it's a little deeper than that. And I can't really pin it down, right? It's hard to pin down to, like, one solid point here, because it's just a thought that I'm doing a thinking exercise here. But I can't help but think that the experience of beauty, it can be beautiful and sad, it can be beautiful and happy, but I think there's something about beauty that you can't quantify and you can't commodify and you can't buy. And I think that we experience this when we really connect with a story. A really good example is, like, I've brought this up before, but it's like, if you've ever been to the Grand Canyon and you look out over this immense vista of this insane geological formation that is just on a scale that is hard for the mind to comprehend when you're there. This is a hard thing to, like, try to replicate by just being, like, looking at videos or something of the Grand Canyon. Like, there is an experiential thing when you're there where there's something almost like spiritual about the experience of seeing it, of seeing beauty in nature. And I have had this ache, like there is this pulling ache that I've experienced when I personally, when I was younger and I first saw the Grand Canyon. There's like almost like a pain to seeing this like massive beauty. You just feel it. But it's also something we like being near. And I think that I've had that same experience with like an amazing movie that touches on some kind of truth about life and about existence. I've had that experience, dealing with a lot of different scenarios, but generally they like connect with truth and beauty and like these more abstract ideas that aren't as easy to like kind of write down and have like at a bullet pointed like transactional kind of way of looking at it. So anyhow, I was just thinking about this because I read the news today, and it very much felt like that Beatles song about reading the news, where it's like you can feel overwhelmed by just all the horrors and all the horrible things happening in the world. And there's beauty in the world happening too. There's good things. But when confronted with that, I was surprised by the fact that, because I did have that fleeting thought of like, so I'm making a book, like, so what? Who cares? Will anyone even read this? Like, does it even have purpose? Does art have value? And my very quick answer was just like, yes, inherently it has value, because it's an expression of us who are made in the image of God. Like, that's my view on it. And that expression alone has to have value, because that statement that we're in the image of God has inherent intrinsic value that can't be earned, it can't be bought, and it can't be commodified. And I think that art in general, storytelling in general, as corny as it is, no matter how good or bad it is, I think there's value in it. And that was kind of what I immediately thought, but I kind of wanted to pull it apart a little bit and see if there's anything there. So I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about that, if this rant made any sense at all. I don't know if it's all that deep, what I'm saying. It's just something that's on my mind. So anyhow, that's gonna basically do it. I gotta get to work, but yeah, it's an interesting thought exercise to kind of think outside of like commerce, outside of just like a monetary value. What gives your art value for you? Like, what do you think the value is in storytelling? And like, are storytellers valuable? Like, do we do any good? Like, do the stories shape society at all? And is that the only value in art? Like, is the only value in art based on whether it does good? It's an interesting thought experiment, and I'm not sure, again, if I've even come up with like a solid answer for it. But I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on it. And that'll do it. I'm going to basically go get to work. So if you haven't yet, hit subscribe, hit the bell, so you get notified when I'm about to go live and do live streams. If you haven't shown up on the live streams, I encourage you guys, check them out. They're a lot of fun. It's a really fun community that we've built on YouTube, with just the general Artcasters community. And then outside of that, I really, especially on this topic, because it's a wobbly idea that I haven't really fully expressed or fully even worked out. I'd love, whenever I have an idea like that, to really hear what you guys have to say, because again, like, it helps me kind of formulate a better way of articulating what I'm thinking, or at least figuring out what I'm thinking. So, that was it. That was the thing we were all waiting for. So I think I was upside down for a second, but that'll do it for the vlog. Sorry for the shock right there with the camera falling, and I will see you guys on the next vlogins or live stream. Have a good night or day. Bye.